Hello, willkommen, bienvenue. Welcome once again to another one of my live streams with the myself, Gareth Wax, many purple hats, and David Chernick, a man
Yo.
who is not he's not a stranger to the hiring process. He knows all about what it is required to find that first person. I happen to be on the cusp of trying to find a salesperson to kind of replace myself within the company, as it were. If you do things well in your company and you are the crux of it all, then you are inherently creating a problem for the future because you can't scale. And the reason why you can't scale is because you're the crux of it all. So I'm seeking to almost usurp my position in my own company. And therein lies the problem. Do I look for someone just like me? Do I try and find someone who epitomizes some of those qualities and then agonize that they're not getting everything? What do I do?
Well, that's just the beginning of it. You wait until you start getting applications in and have to pick one. And then you wait until you do pick one and have to offer them the job and then negotiate and get them in there.
I don't mind the negotiation bit. It's the agony of choice because I know there's a marketplace full of 1,000 people, some of which may be any good. And the problem is I don't know any of them.
I think that you, like probably most people, focus a lot on who the person is going to be and finding that person, whereas the hiring is really, there's way more to it, the hiring, and there's so many points of pain. There is the attraction of the right candidate, and there's the selection, and then there's the onboarding. And that whole thing is just fraught and painful, and in my experience, usually doesn't work.
What are you saying? The whole process that usually doesn't work?
Usually fails a few times before somebody happens upon the right person. Happens on something that works, a person that works, and it's not necessarily the right person. Actually, a lot of the problems I find are with the onboarding of that person. You find your person and then you hire them, and then you leave them to get on with it, or you give them the list, or you coach them incorrectly, or you tell them to do the wrong things, or you don't know what it is that makes you good at selling your own service, so you cannot get someone else to do it. I've read so many different sort of sales scripts, and the owner managers have given to their first salesperson.
Right.
They're right. This is what I do, and I look at it, I'm like, that's not what you do at all. You think you do. That's the bits that you thought were important, but that is not why people buy from you. I mean, I've got some quite big clients as well that, if I go to their biggest customers, and I've done this, I go to their conferences, and I said, who at that company sold you the stuff? And invariably they'll name the chief executive, because that's the person that they saw as closing the deal and getting everything done. I mean, they don't really often think about the lowly salesperson in the team,
right?
And really what that means is that, of course, that makes your business, as you pointed out, less scalable, because if it's all on you, then you can't sort of scale that very easily. And also it becomes very difficult if you want to exit that, because all the clients depends on the person at the top, the owner. And so, it is incredibly painful, especially when you consider that the whole in recruitment, we would call it the attraction bit. Is very difficult. There's, as you pointed out, hundreds of people potentially looking, but what criteria are you going to use to screen them?
Yes. And you see, for me, my criteria are a lot to do with how you project the image of reliability and believability, and at the same time provide your potential client with value from the get-go. So they have to feel that you almost are setting the bar fairly high right from the go. So they need to be able to do that too. I like to think that when I interact with potential clients, by the end of the first conversation, they feel they've gotten something for it, irrelevant if they never actually use me for paid work. So I want them to be able to provide that same level of expectation.
And
to believe that someone can do that, you need to have a window into their personality, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean,
It's
I
hard
spent
to
many years working in the recruitment sector and for recruiters as well, some quite big ones. And I also spent a lot of time during that period working with business psychologists, people that are running assessment centers.
Right.
So I learned enormous amount about how you define what those different competencies are that give them those, that particular skill that you were talking about, and other skills, but not just skills, actual lived experiences.
I'm personally of the belief that the technical knowledge of whatever product or service that you're selling is the least important part.
That's very interesting that you say that, because that is true. However, if you look at the reasons why managers fire their first salespeople, quite often is, well, they just couldn't understand the product.
Well, that may be so, but I think that
I'm not saying that they're right to believe that, but that is what
I think that you need to look for someone with an aptitude for learning rather than someone who already knows.
Okay, yeah, I definitely buy into that. The aptitude for learning is a really important competency, especially if it's the first employee, because they're going to have to learn everything, and probably quite quickly. And they're going to have to learn it from the owner manager, who probably won't have an enormous amount of time to manage that person. And that indeed is also another thing to worry about, which is how much time you're going to be able to dedicate to managing that person. Because one of the most reliable predictors of how successful these first salespeople are is whether they are following closely supervised. They need close supervision. You need to have, yes, identified what their competencies are, also written down exactly what it is that you're expecting of them, their tasks, and know how you're going to make sure that they do those tasks under close supervision to make sure that they are using the right skills.
Expectation and managing capability is critical. They need to. I think for them to feel successful, certainly if it's their first sales position with you, or if their first sales position within a company like yours, as you say, a small business where you are the fundamental of it all. I mean, I've got a team of 6, but fundamentally, I am sales. So therefore, what they're doing is they're effectively taking the mantle of that, and I have to make peace with the fact they will do it.
You froze.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze ever so slightly. They're going to do it. I have to satisfy myself with the fact that they're going to do it, and probably not as well as you. Of course not.
Well, differently. That's the point. Differently. I'm going to. I'll be here, but I'm going to close my window for the moment. I need to restart my my app. All right. But so how do you get to the point where you can enable? In fact, I'm going to make you big.
Make it just me, man. And this might make you stop talking so much.
Oh, fine. Get you. Go on. How do you get people to make peace with the fact that it'll be different from them?
Yeah, well, this is the age-old problem of hiring people who are like yourself. Most people sort of have heard stories of people hiring a whole team full of replicas of themselves. Do you know what, the actual times I see that is not very commonly. I do see the replication of very particular characteristics. So if where I've had clients with a really sort of macho, blokish owner manager, their first employees quite often will be macho and blokish, or certainly their most influential employees. That's an observation. But I think you start by writing down a list of competencies. So you're really trying to draw a picture of the most important elements of the job that you want doing. If your first sales person is really going to be there doing a lot of cold calling, then one of the competencies is the ability to speak to 100 strangers every day. Another competency would be to be able to keep clear and concise records, writing skills, the use of your CRM software if you've got one, or spreadsheet
Right.
if you don't. Those sort of very, very basic competencies are the most important ones. The ability to take on information about your product and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, that is important. And interpersonal skills, of course, they're important. But what I see in a massive failure, more than not being able to communicate effectively or relationship building skills, is just the person cannot write stuff down, will not write stuff down. And the person has not got experience of and cannot dial 100 different strangers every day and follow a script or anything like that.
It sounds terrible, but do you know what? It's that ability to get on the horse, try and bash it out the park, fail miserably, pick yourself up, dust yourself off without being pulled back from the edge by someone else, and just get on with the next one.
So resilience.
That's the rare bit.
Resilience, and it's difficult to find. And if it is your first salesperson, chances are you are a small business, and you're going to become less attractive as a place to go and work for an already successful salesperson. You probably won't be able to pay as much, and they're going to get less support, and it is more risky for them.
So I was just before we came to air, I was telling David about a potential person I had, because I had a different business for quite a while, which was a telemarketing agency, and my most successful caller in that, who then went off to do something because he was going to write music for the dance scene full time. It's panned out, but it not providing the income he needs, and so therefore he was contacting me only a week ago saying, "Do you have any more work? Do you have any more work?" And I was saying no, but I've got this potential other opportunity. Now, his expectations are that they're going to be at the same sort of level of income, and I'm not sure I can match that at this stage, because it's going to be a small base with an OTE, and therefore he's going to have to come up to that. Having said that, from the kind of person, you see, I'm just ticking boxes here, the kind of person who can get on the horse, get kicked off the horse, climb back on again, I know he's proved himself to me that he can do that, because I had him working for me for 7 years. So I know he's capable of doing that. The other thing is he capable of using my kind of charisma and boundless energy and positivity and get across to the other person that this is a mark of what our business is like. We are there to support our clients, and this is all a reflection of that.
I think with something along those lines, that is quite specific to many purple hats. I mean, your personal branding, your business branding is.
Well, this is the kind of conversation I'm having with myself about this.
So do they need to also be a fellow eccentric? And and there is, you start setting the culture really in a business once you start hiring people. And so, part of the culture of an expanded many purple hats business is probably, I would expect it to be sort of quite creative and zany.
I mean, the fact he is a musician, that he plays a guitar and also is a DJ, to me are positive things. The fact that he can get on the horse again is a positive thing. He has his own mind. He can be hard to manage, but in the past, I let him have enough rope to hang himself with, and he did very well. He survived that very nicely. So
so those sorts of characteristics, I think, are good to have some match in your business, because it's to do with the cultural fit. Most of the people that I have that I refer to as well, they're into music. They're slightly more rock and roll. They're sort of quite individual. They're very, very conscientious. One of my things is conscientiousness. So they'll match those sorts of things. But if I want to bring in competencies for my first salesman, these aren't necessarily always going to be competencies that I personally don't have. And the same goes for for you, and the same goes for lots of micro businesses, because if you've grown to the degree where you can hire somebody and you need to hire somebody, you can afford to hire somebody, chances are that you do know how to sell stuff. Yeah, you might not be the best at it. You might not credit yourself with that being one of your main skills, but you know how you're selling it. And rather than getting your first salesperson in to help you improve the quality of your sales, you know, I've seen that fail so many times. But I would really, for the first salesperson, get them to replicate the stuff that you know works, that you have tried and tested, because it's going to be you who gets them to do it, trains them, supervises them.
Yeah, I've been busy systemizing. So I've been breaking down what I do in my sales process bit by bit, right from the first time I interact with them, which might well be on LinkedIn, all the way through to the first call on Zoom, and what the different parts of it are, how this part is about giving value, which is 80% of it, and the last 20% is about initial sales, but then take it away from them and rebook the next meeting then and there, things like that. But so just so you can hear some of my thought process with this particular gentleman. By the way, gentleman or lady would be fine with me, but it does happen to be he is a gentleman. He's never had to have an account management kind of position. Once he'd done the cold call, for instance, he's off. So I'm asking him to change that attitude, because he's going to have to maintain a relationship with him all the way through to the close. That's quite different. He's never had to close before.
That could be a topic for another day, actually, Gareth, couldn't it? That, you know, the pros and cons of having hunters and farmers as two separate teams, you know, new business salespeople and account managers as two separate teams.
Well, it's the inside sales and the account management, isn't it? It's that classic pairing, whether or not you need it that way, or whether or not one person can run the whole thing from birth to death. But look, as ever, David, I'm glad this has thrown up another alternative. By the way, we've had some positive feedback from Anthony Mason, who sends you some thumbs up.
Thanks.
There you go. Guys, as ever, David and I like talking about various different facets of modern sales. As you can see, we follow a story-based format where we start with one idea. We might end up with something completely different.
It's not a we. That's not we. That's you. I'm trying to keep it back.
I wonder, and David desperately tries to keep me to the script. Guys, it's been a pleasure talking to you all this time. We're getting more hearts through from Yvonne Isaacs, by the way. Yvonne Isaacs there. Thank you, Yvonne. I assume that's for David. Look at him with his fancy iOS-based mojo craziness. But yeah, I all I would say is that it's been a pleasure streaming to you guys this year. We're probably going to be winding down. I don't know. Do you want to do one more before the end?
We're going to do one more before we break up for, I think it's 2 Wednesdays.
2 weeks or thereabouts. But all I would say is we've really enjoyed it.
We might get intoxicated over the Christmas period and sort of just happen upon doing it. No, we won't. Okay.
You can get intoxicated. I won't be. You reserve your right to imbibe the devil's liquor. But I would say to everyone that it may seem like an awful battlefield to work your way through sales, and it may feel like an insuperable target. It isn't. You've just got to take it that you can break it down into chunks, mini systems, and then perfect each one, bolt them all together, and you'll find you have a repeatable process. It really is. Am I right, David? It's
100%. That's very, very well put. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just wish everybody an absolutely safe week and a wonderful week, and of course, good mental health. Goodbye from me.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao. It didn't do it. It didn't do it.
It does sometimes.